the Wancho, for many years had been oblivious to the ways of the world, and the world, in turn, had been oblivious to them, save for one formidable reputation, that of being a warring tribe of headhunters. Surrounded by the high hills of the Patkai range in the Tirap district of Arunachal Pradesh, the land of the Wanchos occupies a prominent geographical position. Across the Patkai lies Myanmar, with whose frontier tribes the Wanchos share a cultural affinity. Legend has it that they migrated from Nyanu Ofan, a place situated southwest, to two villages, Tangnu and Changnu. Today, a Wancho population of about 29,000 occupies some 38 villages. I am Janto Sarkar, an anthropologist. I first came here 27 years ago to research a paper on the Po, or dormitory, a socio-political institution of the Wancho people. The dormitory, or Morung, as it is more popularly known here in the northeast, characterizes and at times indeed determines their very survival. Returning to these familiar hills, I cannot help but reminisce about my days among the Wanchos, a beautiful people whose lifestyle went far beyond just headhunting. I was aware, though, that over these 27 years, much would have changed. The question was, how much? On my last visit, I had trekked for 3 days through harsh terrain to cover just 50 kilometers, hitching a ride on the occasional cart or rare truck. Today, it takes a mere 2 hours to travel the distance. Perhaps the first indication I have seen of the path to progress. At Longkhao, I met the new chief. His father, my friend, had sadly passed on some 3 years ago. He took me to his father's Morung, where I saw once again the skulls and the grand old log drum, beside which I had spent many days learning about the various functions of the Morung. It broke my heart to find it in such a state of disrepair. Perhaps the new chief saw my pain and informed me that I was fortunate to have arrived in time to witness one of the rarest of occasions these days, the construction of a new Morung at a nearby village. The tapping of the hollow bamboo poles, echoing from hill to hill, is a sound I remember as if it were only yesterday. The refrain of the accompanying songs brought back happy memories of the inseparable bond of the Wancho community as they gathered together yet again to celebrate this joyous occasion. The village chief held court to allocate tasks to build the new Morung. As was the custom, the young men were instructed to head out into the surrounding forests to collect palm leaves and bamboo. The Wang Sampas, or heads of the different Morungs, assisted by village elders, supervised the construction of the various sections of the dormitory. Wancho villages are fairly congested, so the chief divides the village into smaller administrative units, or jongs, comprising of a few houses each, and he delegates some power to each. In turn, each jong is centered on a morung. The number of morangs may vary depending on the size, number of houses, and population of the village. An official called the Wang Sampa, who is a member of the chief's clan, represents each morung. His office is hereditary, handed down from father to son. Early each morning, the young men headed out into the dense forests to cut down bamboo and palm leaves, tying them into bundles. Much enthusiasm flavored this activity, as each group competed with the other to see who would cut down the most bamboo in the shortest time. And I was once again amazed at the traditional Wancho dexterity in wielding the dao, which is a machete. Used for various tasks, it can cut bamboo, is used in intricate wood carving, and was used in the past to hunt animals and human heads. And such hard labor requires an occasional swig of rice beer to keep the festive spirits high. The land having been allocated, the materials having been brought in, after hours of hard work, the preparations for the construction begin without delay. The old men dry fresh palm leaves or turcopat for use as thatch, while the stronger young men get about their task of erecting the frame. They are building the Pasa Morang, which is the social center of the village. It is here that the boys and young men of the village will sleep. It is here, too, that they will learn of the traditional lore of their people. Originally, morangs were built mainly as guardhouses for the safety of the village. But today, its role is that of a centralized power, from where the day-to-day functions of the village are regulated. It is also a dwelling house for the village bachelors and the venue for village meetings, where important decisions regarding hunting, fishing, and cultivation are taken. It is a clubhouse where most festivals, dances, and entertainment are held. The morang also functions as a guest house, hosting important visitors. And finally, it is the repository for the heads that were brought from enemy villages in days gone by. Since it is at the core of the social forces that bind the Wanchos together, when a new morang has to be built, every able-bodied man throws his shoulder to the yoke. A Wancho boy enters the morang at puberty and lives here until he is transformed into a man. It is here that he will learn from the elders of the past glory of the village. It is here that he is tutored in the social norms of Wancho life and of the civic and domestic duties expected of a Wancho male, like cleaning the village paths and cultivating the land owned by those who are too old to look after them. Despite spotting the odd piece of modern furniture, I noted that the basic ground plan of the morang hadn't changed. Morangs are rectangular in shape, built on the ground, except for the rear section, that usually stands on stilts. The frame is constructed of solid logs. An open chang or platform in the front serves as a veranda and a drying platform. The front part of the morung is used as a common room. And the fireplace here is the center of activity around which meetings and discussions are held. Inside, the boys sleep on bamboo mats in the fashion of bunk beds. Till recently, life in the morung followed a leisurely pace. There was time enough to recount tales, to indulge in long drawn-out games of chess, and to learn the uniquely beautiful wood carving for which the Wancho is now famous. The motifs and figures of these wood carvings reflect their close communion with nature. Their purpose? To keep at bay the evil spirits that may wish them harm. The tiger is a common motif, perhaps because in the past the forests were full of them. Very few, if at all, share the same habitat today. The more recent morungs do not sport such intricate carvings. Instead, Wanchos prefer to showcase their skills in the commercial circuits of indigenous expositions. The chief's house, which is the political nerve center, is much like the Pasa Morung, with one fundamental difference. Instead of bunk beds for the village boys, it has as many chambers as the chief has wives. In fact, I remember hearing about the chief of Ninu, who had 40 wives and 40 rooms, one for each wife. Each chamber has its own hearth where the wives cook their own separate meals. At the back is a huge space where the old women live, an area for pounding rice, and to house the log drum used when the chief summons the villagers. Wancho society is divided into 4 classes. The chief is known as the Wangham, and his principal wife belongs to the same class as him. His other wives belong to the other classes, namely the Wangsas, followed by the Wangsus, and then the Wangpans, or the commoners. Each of the classes below the Wangham is born of a father who belongs to the class directly above. Wancho men usually wear their hair long and keep it in place with traditional headgear called kuhon, made of bamboo or cane. Sometimes they tie it in a knot with pins. However, I noticed that the younger men wore hats and caps, their hair cropped short in a modern hairstyle. For the women, hairdressing differs according to social class. I noticed very little change in the way Wancho women wore their hair. As I prepared to leave the village to return to Longkhao for the night, I found that the old men were still hard at work with the dried palm leaves. These leaves will thatch the roof of the now complete frame of the morung. A fire inside fumigates the interior. And all through, the villagers celebrate, dancing their bamboo dance, which I know will go on till the early hours of the morning. A rare celebration of a return to tradition, a reminder of the once rich heritage of the Wanchos. The Wanchos, I learned, still have a subsistence economy based mainly on agriculture. However, with many of the youth moving to the cities, the old men of the village do not find the customary help they would have received from the morung. I wondered how long agriculture would still continue to remain the chief source of livelihood. With stretches of empty fields and no one left to work them. But for now, the jhoom or slash and burn method of cultivation is still universal among the Wanchos. The season begins with ritual offerings of rice, a chicken, and rice beer to appease the gods. The arduous tasks of jungle cutting and burning are done by the men from the different morungs. While the women busy themselves with clearing and preparing the fields for sowing. Land is owned both individually and collectively by the village. And each village may own about 9 or 10 jhoom fields. One field is cultivated for 2 consecutive years, when millet and other vegetables are grown during the first year, and paddy in the second. Thereafter, the field is left fallow till its fertility returns in another 7, 9, or 11 years, according to its cycle. In ancient times, land disputes were many, and the Wancho would fight to the finish, but he would never allow another to take from him that which he deemed sacred, the village lands. The protective instinct of the Wancho has given birth to its formidable reputation as a headhunter. Fertile land was hard to come by, and many a chief sought to raid and conquer land belonging to a neighboring village. Under threat, the chief's war council would meet and work hard to arrive at a peaceful solution. Sometimes such overtures would avert a war. Very often, however, they wouldn't. The need to grab fertile land from a neighboring village would override sound judgment on the part of a stubborn and hostile chief. Leaving the challenged chief with no option but to formally declare war. And then, on a seemingly peaceful night under the Wancho moon, while the young boys sleep soundly, the battle-ready men of the village would wait for the sound of the kham to give them the sign. And then the village braves would head out into the night, armed with the dao and old guns left behind by the British. No price was too heavy for the Wancho to pay to protect his village. And every Wancho looked forward to the moment of reckoning when he might prove himself in battle and bring home that much coveted trophy of victory. The head that was brought was handed to the chief, who conferred the right of decoration by tattoo during an elaborate war dance, where the act of heroism was enacted and lauded by the village at large. Tattooing, a slow and painful process, is the privilege of the chief's principal wife. Patterns are first drawn on the part of the body to be tattooed with black paint made of soot. Then, the skin is pricked with thorns along the lines till it bleeds. The blood is wiped off, and a bluish juice of the jamun tree is smeared into the scars. Besides coloring, this pigment also helps heal the wounds. Male tattooing was related to war, and apart from being a most admired and cherished decoration, the tattoo was of important social significance. It marked the status and achievements of a man. Only those who could prove their bravery by taking trophies of heads and bring them to the village for prosperity could aspire to it. A man who was tattooed rose in esteem in the village, and girls would shower their attention on those who sported these insignia of heroism. But men of the new generation do not tattoo themselves because they do not hunt heads anymore. What I witnessed here is but a mere pantomime of their glorious head-hunting days of ancient times. A Wancho woman was tattooed 4 times in her life. The first is a pattern of 2 cross lines at the navel when she is 6 or 7 years old. Upon attaining puberty, her calves are tattooed with a line around it and a zigzag or a diamond-like design over the tibia. The third tattoo solemnizes the consummation of marriage and is done on the thigh just above the knee. The fourth and final tattoo is done in the 7th month of pregnancy or after the birth of the first child. The design, in the shape of an M, has 3 lines sprawled over the breasts. I ventured to ask the young lady how she could be so unmoved by the painful process, and was met with peals of laughter from all the women attending the ceremony, including the chief's wife. Unlike the Wancho men, the women of the village do not have a separate building to house their dormitories. Instead, they reside in a room behind the chief's house, where an old woman acts as chaperone, tutor, and matron. It is here that the girls learn skills associated with the women of the village, with regard to cultivation and their reproductive and domestic roles. It is also to these dormitories that the boys from the Morung come to woo them. Free mixing between the sexes among the Wanchos is a common practice. And such suits, expressed in amorous songs, passed back and forth from the Morung to the girls' quarters, are the customary ways of leading up to a proposal for marriage. Once accepted, in keeping with the norms of the social classes to which the bride and groom belong, the newlyweds move out of their dormitories and set up their own home, with the hope and the promise of giving birth to a new life. A new generation. But what is this new generation going to be born into? The Morung is dying. The chief does not hold court in most villages, and the Kham does not call the warriors to arms anymore. The Wancho landscape is littered with such metaphors of death and decay. So much so that even the dead do not earn a traditional burial. I spoke with the chief about how much of the Morung had lapsed into disuse. And he gave me a startling account of one of the reasons for the drastic changes that had taken place. Many Morungs had been converted into chapels and prayer halls. This surprised me. As an anthropologist, I know that a process of conversion to a new faith takes some time before it becomes so starkly visible. It has taken the Wanchos a mere 3 to 4 years to convert to a new faith, and the chief's account of how it transpired was remarkable. The Wanchos had an annual custom of feeding the skulls that were kept in the Morungs to pay for their past sins. This was accompanied by much feasting and soon became increasingly unaffordable. And so, over time, the rites were no longer performed. The missionaries apparently then told the Wanchos that if they did not continue with the rites, they could not pay for their past sins and would be cursed for 4 generations. So, to appease the spirits, the Wanchos buried the skulls and followed the teachings of the missionaries. It was not very long before large numbers of the Wancho people found themselves believing in a faith and a god other than their own. And the Morung, in turn, began to be used as a prayer hall of a new religion. Now, the Wancho villages are dotted with such new edifices, which once used to be the all-important Morung. While I cannot deny the Wanchos the benefits of modern civilization and hence a better standard of living, I cannot help but feel deeply saddened at the loss of the traditional ways of a people with whom I bonded so strongly years ago, and among whom I have seen for myself the strong bonds of kinship. True, changed economic pressures have driven the Wancho youth to the cities and to schools, where modern education equips them with skills traditional folklore cannot provide. But at what price? As the chief told me of the economic pressures that his people were subject to on account of a rising population and the slow jhum cultivation process, I found myself agreeing with him that it was only natural that the younger generation would leave the village one day to find their fortunes in the cities. But I shared a sense of loss at the erosion of the Wancho way of life, as symbolized by the dilapidated state of the Morung, that once was vibrant with an energy that kept its people together. With increasing exposure to modern art and science, technology and commerce, it is only a matter of a short while before all the Morungs in Wancho villages lie vacant. And as the young drift away, the chasm between the past and the future grows deeper. And I fear that someday the beautiful Wancho may have to carve out an identity divorced from his roots, his past, and the rich heritage of his people. For now, I know I'm leaving behind a tawny sunset and an old Wancho chief who sits recounting to vacant spaces tales of glory to the sound of the ever-so-distant hum that beats time to the memory of the warring, head-hunting ways of the Wancho. The fascinating dormitory system of the Wancho is no longer in currency, except in a few small pockets. I cannot help but wonder how much time is left before even these small pockets surrender to the onslaught of time and lie wasted and weary as silent witnesses of the brave Wancho. I fear that it won't be too long.